This is a podcast designed for BCD people with BCD people. On this show, we're celebrating the diverse workplace cultures and connecting people across functions with our most confident self-colleagues. So come on, let's go have some fun as we feed our future learning about the business, each other, and life at BCD. Ryan, welcome to the podcast this week.
Thank you very much, Chica. Glad to be here.
Now, Ryan, I recognize the accent. I know that maybe a few of our viewers that know you do too, but you have quite a strange story at BCD because it doesn't sound like you're from Atlanta, which is where you're based, correct?
That's correct. I am based in Atlanta currently.
And so where's that accent from? Gosh, it sounds sexy. Or sporty, I say.
It is a very attractive accent. I'll give you that. I'm from Australia, from the closest city to where I grew up is Brisbane, which is on the east coast of Australia. And nice. I grew up in a little beach town, which is incredibly tough.
Go Australia, I'm so sure. So tell us your story, Ryan. How did you get to Atlanta? What do you do at BCD? And kind of just run us through the gauntlet.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been with BCD for, I think this is my 9th year now. And before that, I was working for another company called Sabre. Most listeners would hopefully know them as one of the travel companies. And BCD was a customer of mine. I got offered a job to join BCD as the IT manager for BCD Travel Australia. And I was definitely up for the idea. I talked to the team about it and figured out what the job was about. And it seemed to really be a good fit for me. So I accepted the role. I was in that role for about 3 or 4 years. And then one sunny day, Reggie McNeil, who's our Senior Vice President of Infrastructure and Communications Technology, he came out to Australia and was spending some time over lunch just talking about the Australian operations, what my job looked like, where we could improve things. And I just had an off-the-cuff comment. I'd like to live in America. And Reggie kind of looked at me with surprise and said, really? And I said, yeah, definitely. I love to travel. Every time I've gone to America, I love the cities I've visited so far. I want to see more of it. And that turned into a 2-hour-long conversation on how to get me into the US. And by the end of that conversation, Reggie said to me, right, I'll make it happen. I'll have you there in 6 months. So obviously I had a bit of a heart attack because that wasn't a whole lot of time to get myself ready to move to a whole new country. But we started the process. It took a lot longer because immigration is quite complex. I went through, got my visa. I was very fortunate to get that. It's not an easy thing to come by. Moved to Atlanta in 2015. And I've been working with BCD in Atlanta ever since. I am the IT manager over infrastructure services. So infrastructure services has several arms. My team's arms, we look after server and storage and backup and recovery. So essentially anything, any infrastructure that our business applications run on, so servers, storage, so very big hard drives, let's say, is managed by my team. We also manage the backups of that data. So if any data goes missing, you can come to us. We can restore it for you. We made sure that data is reliable and accurate. And that is essentially the core of what we do. It's quite more in-depth than that, but I don't want to bore the listeners with all the nerdy details.
And you may not bore any listeners because I got some real pointed questions coming at you in just a second,
Sure.
Ryan. But
Okay.
before we get into the details and we geek out around the work that you do, maybe explain how big is your team? Because I know that it's not just you doing all of this, right?
Thankfully, no. I have a fantastic team. I have 16 employees reporting into me. We've got some based in Atlanta, some in the rest of Georgia. We've got some in Germany, in Poland, in Antwerp, in just outside London. We've got some free resources that we work with over in India. And I think I said Hamburg as well. So we've got people everywhere.
That's great. And so maybe then we just dive straight in. So you said a team of 16 right now, and you're trying to restore. So let me be the layman here that doesn't understand infrastructure. Help us understand that a little bit more. Are we talking just about, you said applications. So if I pull something into my recycling bin off my desktop and it goes missing, is that the stuff you're talking about recovering?
So that is actually more desktop related. So this is where it gets quite confusing to the layman because IT is so diverse and there's so many different functions within IT. It can get the waters can get very muddied very quickly. So we don't really touch on individual users' desktops, so their laptops, their PCs, whatever. What we more focus on is the foundations that our applications run off. So things like decision source,
Okay.
trip source, and a lot of our web servers that we have out in the field for our online tools that DevOps consume, email, so Exchange, we help host that as well. So there's just some examples of what we look after, and it's our responsibility to keep the lights on to keep those applications running.
And so is your team then part of the data centers, or is that something different too? The data centers are the beehives, right, where the physical servers sit.
Correct. And yes, we do spend a lot of time in the data centers. We have a lot of hardware in there that my team manages. So we have what's called the compute, or the brain part, that does all the processing. We also manage the storage arrays. And the storage arrays is where your data resides, where the application data resides. I think a really good example for those listeners in North America is the S drive. Most users would be familiar with the S drive. I would hope that they have on their laptops. Where that data sits is sitting on infrastructure that my team manages.
Fast forward then, Ryan. What's keeping you up at night for your role in your team? Is it like security breach? Is it I don't know. What's keeping you up at night?
I would say keeping up with demand. The business is growing exponentially, either through acquisition or organically. And we need to, as a team, ensure that we are delivering new servers, new hardware, new infrastructure on time to ensure we're not delaying projects. And whilst we do have a big team, we are responsible for most projects globally. And we just need to manage our time as efficiently as we can and deliver to ensure that those projects aren't being held up so our customers get the best service. So that's certainly a big thing. And data protection is a very big talking point within our team as well. You kind of touched on it earlier, but you hear lots of horror stories about ransomware getting into environments, viruses, even just simple things like users accidentally deleting data, which happens from time to time. They're all things we need to be mindful of and protect our data as much as we can against those types of situations. So if we are hit by ransomware, or if we do have an accidental deletion, we can get that data back in a timely fashion with the most recent copy possible.
Well, high five to you and your team and pulling together the user experience, the end user as the priority there. So as an employee, Ryan, how can we best support your team? As just an individual contributor, here I am sitting in Atlanta. What can I be doing daily or maybe even just yearly that helps support your team?
I would say it's a good question, but I would say please follow the standard process for raising an IT support ticket. We have a fantastic help desk, which does not report into me, but they are the first line of support, and they are usually the quickest. They have a much larger team. They're more prepared to deal with the end users. So they are the front line. They're the ones who will listen to your request and determine whether or not it should be sent through to us for a more in-depth review and troubleshooting or fixing the issue, whatever the case might be. And we can then fix that for you and for your team. Without that process, if you come to me directly, I can get inundated, overwhelmed. Things can fall through the cracks. It's hard to prioritize. So that's really one of the most important things. And I will also say, when you are raising a support ticket, be as detailed as you possibly can.
And where would we find a support ticket?
That would be in the brand new One Touch service management platform, which is fantastic. I certainly prefer it myself. I've used it quite a few times. Vicky and Kia and her team have done a fantastic job rolling this tool out, and the flow is better, it's more readable, and it's certainly more user-friendly for end users who are raising support tickets as well.
Hey, what's up? This is Chika interrupting the podcast with a shout out to our fellow Australians down under. There's tragedies all around the world, and none more this year in the new decade that we are seeing with the wildfires in Australia. We want to send our love to all of our BCD colleagues down there who are affected. We want to give a shout out to all of the Australian and worldly firefighters that are flying in now from around the globe to help assist, put out and save lives and save property. So it wouldn't be amiss on this episode where we have two BCD Australians chatting to give a shout out to our friends down under. So if you'd like to help, please reach out to me and I can point you in the right directions to donate if that's something you wish to do to help support the efforts and or send some love down to our offices. But let's get back to the podcast. Thanks for letting us interrupt, and much love to our Australian friends. Go Australia.
So, Ryan, let me turn the corner then real quick. You said that you are responsible for a team of 16. If I ask you to just change hats and put on like a manager's hat right now, what are some of the things that you do effectively as a manager to help manage a team of 16?
I would say regular communication with your direct reports. Have been experimenting a bit in this role. I've only been in this role for about a year now. It's certainly the biggest team I've ever managed. So I initially started out and I wasn't having regular scheduled meetings with my team and with the individual team members. And over time, I started to realize there were some members in my team that I would neglect, certainly not on purpose, but they just weren't getting enough airtime, for lack of a better word, with me.
Right.
So I went through and I put together a schedule. I'm starting monthly right now, and it's working so far, where I have half an hour blocked off every month for every single one of my reports. It sounds very overwhelming, but the value I've gotten out of that already is phenomenal. That quick half an hour, it doesn't necessarily have to be about, and it's preferably not about what you're doing right now. It's what other issues are you having? Are you having problems with another team? Are you having challenges in your day-to-day work? Are you unhappy with where you're at? How can I help you progress? How can I help you grow? And it's a bit more generic. So
awesome.
That's certainly.
So you're focusing on the person, which is really, really important, right?
Yes, that is certainly a big part of managing such a big team. Let's face it, we all are here to do a job. If we could all retire at the age of 30, I'm sure we would, but we're not. We're here for the long haul. So I try and make it as pleasant as possible for my team and as comfortable as possible so they can at least enjoy coming to work and doing what they do.
And as we look across the landscape of the marketplace at the moment from an HR lens, all we keep hearing is that our employees, whether it be here at BCD Travel or again even in the marketplace, employees are overwhelmed. Do you find that within your team, that your team is struggling just to manage their time, that they're constantly just being pulled under and under more work? Is that what's happening on your team, or is that just stuff we're reading in the industry reports?
No, we are certainly feeling that as well. And that comes from a number of different areas. Tools like Microsoft Teams that was deployed earlier this year, as fantastic as that tool is for communication, it also allows users to bypass the support process that I mentioned earlier by going through One Touch. And they will come to people in my team directly. I'm not aware of it. They're working on something, and then I come to them and say, hey, where are you with this? And they're like, well, I was working on that. And I say, well, I wasn't aware you're working on that. And they get overwhelmed. I get frustrated. And we kind of have to reconnect and figure out what's going on. So it is
coming back to your comment earlier, which is go through the right process, right?
Exactly.
Because I'm sure we're all finding that it's more convenient to, instead of following the process, ping somebody and have them solve it for your needs immediately.
That's very true. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize or may not realize is the person you're hitting up directly or you're speaking to directly may be on vacation, or they might be in a meeting and you're reaching out to only one person. Whereas if you go through the support channel, you have a much larger team to address your immediate concern. So it doesn't just sit with that person until they come back from vacation if you go through the right channels.
So Ryan, I know that you've got a massive team that you're working with. How does the ladder go up from you all the way to, I think you said Reggie, correct?
That's correct, and I hope you're not asking this because you want to escalate something. But
no, I would ping you directly for that, right?
Sure. But in all seriousness, I report into Alan Peterson, who's based in the UK.
Yes.
Alan Peterson reports into Dan Leander, who's in Copenhagen, and then you got Dan Leander, who reports into Mike Howard, and Mike Howard reports into Reggie McNeil.
Very cool.
So there's still.
With that massive team, Ryan, I'm sure you guys, could you maybe share some of the stats around some of the accomplishments you guys have achieved this year?
Yeah, sure. Probably one of the biggest achievements is year to date, we built 940 servers. To give you some perspective, last year, that's globally as well. So that includes EMEA and Yuki and North America. APAC, I unfortunately don't have the stats for, but that's 940 servers that we built this year. Now compare that to last year, and we built maximum 300 servers, maybe.
Well, that's a lot of information in a short amount of time, Ryan. Thank you for what your team does. Again, keeping the end user in mind, but also protecting everything that we're doing and all we're working on as a full-on company too. So great job to you. High five to your team. And are you ready to close out this fun episode of Life at BCD?
I certainly am. Let's go for
and
it.
Listeners, for you, we were talking just before we got online here, and we were like, two Australians, give them both a microphone. We could talk for days, and we thought we'd give the listeners a bit of a schooling on Australian language. How's that sound, Ryan?
It sounds good, and I hope I don't fail my country because I've been out for about 4.5 years now. So
you mean
it might be a test for me.
We've got two Patriots now looking back down. So what I think we'll do right now is I'm going to maybe you can be the translator, and I'm going to say something in Australian, and then you translate it for our listeners into, normal English.
All right, that sounds good.
Context, all right? So, all right, number one, Ryan, I'll see you this arvo, mate.
You were saying you will see me this afternoon.
Very good.
Australians abbreviate everything. So arvo is short for afternoon.
All right. Ryan, I'd love to meet with you, but I'm chockers right now.
That means you're busy. Chockers, I haven't heard that one for a while. But you can say chock-a-block, chock-a-full, chockers, and that all just means you've got a lot on your plate.
Love it. Hey, Ryan, can you go over to the esky and grab me one, mate?
Yes, I still call it an esky here, and I get strange looks. So an esky for those in America is a cooler. For those in New Zealand, it's a chili bin. And I'm sure there's other names for it around the world, but essentially it's a portable case for your cool drinks and food.
I got a couple more for you.
Sure.
I was talking to my teammate, and all they were doing was whinging, and it was just driving me bonkers.
So essentially that teammate was complaining, and it was driving you insane, driving you a bit crazy.
Ryan, you passed me a crunchy, and I go tar. What does tar mean?
First, I think we need to explain what a crunchy is.
We go there first.
It's a chocolate bar. It's a piece of honeycomb actually covered in chocolate, and they are delicious.
Sweet as, mate.
They're sweet as.
All right, final one for our listeners here, and then we'll cut it out because we could go all day. I walked down the road and the servo was shut.
So you walked down the road and the gas station was shut, or the petrol station was shut, whatever you want to call it. So
wherever you're living.
Yeah.
Ryan, I appreciate you sharing some of your life at BCD this week on the podcast, and I can't wait to catch up with you in person real time soon, so we can grab our stubby holders and go get a brewski, mate.
Sweet as.
Do they call it a brewski back then? I didn't even know.
Have a Betty. Have a Betty.
There you go. All right, listeners, we'll get you soon next week on Life at BCD. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.